I'll never forget that day inside Golden Sunset Care Center. I was there just to visit my Uncle Walter, a proud World War II Marine who still carried himself like the battlefield was yesterday. The place smelled like cheap bleach and sadness, and the air always felt too quiet, too still. Then I heard it, a sharp crack echoing down the hallway, the kind of sound that makes your gut twist because you know it was a slap, not a drop tray. I ran toward the noise, boots pounding the tile, and what I saw made my blood boil. The nursing home director, Patricia Hoffman, stood over an old man who had fallen to the floor. His lip was bleeding, his hands trembling as he tried to reach his walker. That old man was my Uncle Walter. "You filthy old bastard!" Patricia screamed, her voice shaking with rage. "How dare you accuse me of stealing?" Walter's voice came out weak but steady. "Because you are stealing," he gasped. "The food money, the medicine funds, all of it." I knelt down, helped him up, and that's when the rest of my brothers showed up. 14 Hell's Angels who'd been visiting another vet down the hall. The doorway filled with leather, patches, and fury. "What the hell's going on here?" I demanded. Patricia straightened her fancy designer suit and tried to sound calm. "Mr. Miller fell," she said, forcing a smile. "He's confused and making wild accusations." "I didn't fall," Walter shot back, shaking his head. "She hit me because I found out what she's been doing to us." That was when I really looked at him. He'd lost at least 30 pounds since I saw him last month. His eyes looked sunken, his skin paper-thin. "Uncle Walt," I asked softly, "when was the last time you ate?" He hesitated, and tears welled up in his tired eyes. "They give us 1 meal a day now," he whispered, "sometimes just crackers and water." Every biker in that hallway tensed up, shoulders squared, jaws clenched. It was like watching coiled snakes ready to strike. "That's dementia talking," Patricia said quickly, waving her hands. "We serve 3 full meals every day." Hammer, the club president, stepped forward, his voice calm but deadly. "Then you won't mind if we check the kitchen?" "You can't do that," Patricia barked. "This is private property." "Call the cops then," Hammer said, taking out his phone. "Let's get this all on record." Her face went pale, but she still tried to act tough. "Everyone out before I call security." And that's when we heard a faint voice coming from another room. "Please, help us." The hallway went silent for a second. Then we pushed past Patricia and headed toward the voice. None of us knew what we were about to see, but we all felt it in our bones. Something was terribly wrong inside that place. The moment we pushed past Patricia, the smell hit us, a mix of rot, disinfectant, and death. I'd been in war zones that smelled better. Room after room, we found the same nightmare. Men who had once stormed beaches, who'd liberated camps and fought for the world's freedom, now lying in soiled beds, their bodies nothing but skin and bone. Some were too weak to lift their heads. Others just stared at us with hollow eyes. "She's been stealing everything," whispered a frail voice from the nearest bed. I turned and saw James Chin, a 92-year-old Navy vet I'd met once before. He could barely talk, but every word trembled with anger. "Our medicine, our food money, even our personal things. She sells them for cash." I felt my stomach twist. My uncle's medals were missing from his nightstand. His grandfather's watch, gone. The photos of his fallen brothers that he'd kept since the war, vanished. I turned to Patricia, who'd followed us into the room looking pale as a ghost. "Where are his things?" I asked, my voice low, dangerous. "Probably misplaced," she stammered. Dementia patients hide things all the time. Before I could answer, Hammer stepped closer, the rest of the brothers forming a wall behind him. The air in that hallway could have split steel. Patricia looked around like a cornered animal, realizing for the first time she'd picked a fight she couldn't win. Then Walter pulled something from his pocket. His phone. His hands were shaking, but his eyes burned with clarity. "I'm not demented," he said, "and I recorded everything." He opened the gallery and started playing videos. We all watched in silence. There she was, Patricia Hoffman, caught on camera taking envelopes of cash from families, stuffing bills into her purse, whispering orders to staff to cut meals and water down meds. One clip showed her loading boxes into the trunk of her Mercedes, veterans' belongings, clear as day. Patricia's face went red, then white. "You old fool!" she screamed and lunged at Walter. I caught her wrist before she could reach him and squeezed just enough to make her drop to her knees. "Touch him again," I told her, "and you'll be the one needing a nursing home." "I'll have you arrested for assault," she spat, her voice cracking. Hammer lifted his phone, still filming. "Please do," he said. "We'll wait for the cops right here." Patricia tried to bolt for the door, but 3 of my brothers stepped in front of her. "Sit down," I said. "We're having a conversation." While we waited for the police, the truth started spilling out, not just from Walter or James, but from every veteran who could still speak. For 2 years, Patricia had been bleeding this place dry. She cut their meals down to 1 a day, watered their medications, and let the weakest die faster so she could open new beds and pull in fresh money. 27 men, James whispered. 27 of us are gone. We tried to tell people. She said nobody would believe senile old men. I'll never forget the silence that followed. You could feel every man in that hallway shaking with fury. These weren't just old veterans anymore. They were soldiers again, standing their ground one last time. We went to the kitchen. 3 loaves of white bread, a few jars of peanut butter. That was supposed to feed 48 men. But when we checked Patricia's office, it told a different story. Expensive whiskey lined her shelves, designer handbags, bank papers stacked high showing over $2 million stolen. I turned to her and said, "That money was meant for these heroes." And then she said something that made the room freeze. "They're dying anyway," she muttered. "What difference does it make?" Hammer took a slow step forward. His voice dropped to a whisper. "What difference?" he repeated. "Lady, these men saved the world." He pulled out his phone again and made one call. "Brothers," he said, "we need everyone at Golden Sunset. Now." Within the hour, the rumble of engines filled the air. 200 bikers surrounded the nursing home. Not just Hell's Angels, but riders from every club with veterans in their ranks. And we all had one thing in common. We were done being quiet. By the time the police arrived, the nursing home was surrounded. The sound of Harley engines echoed like thunder across the parking lot. 200 bikers stood outside, arms crossed, leather vests glinting under the afternoon sun. Inside, the air felt thick enough to choke on. Patricia sat in her office chair, trying to look calm while her mascara streaked down her face. Detective Morrison walked in, his badge shining against his shirt. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, glancing from Patricia to the rest of us. "This woman's been murdering veterans slowly," I said, my voice low but steady. "Starving them, denying medicine, stealing their money. Patricia gave a nervous laugh. "You can't prove murder," she said, crossing her arms. "They're dying of old age." Before I could respond, the front door swung open, and a woman in a white lab coat stepped inside. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "I'm Dr. Sarah Kim," she announced. "Geriatric medicine. I've been investigating the unusual death rate here for months." Patricia's face went pale. Dr. Kim handed Morrison a thick folder. "These are the records," she said. "Every death, every falsified report, every missing medication order. These men were deliberately malnourished and denied treatment. This isn't neglect, it's homicide." The room went silent, except for the faint buzzing of the fluorescent lights. Patricia's breathing grew fast and shallow. Morrison flipped through the papers, his jaw tightening. "Patricia Hoffman," he said finally, "you're under arrest for 48 counts of elder abuse and 27 counts of negligent homicide." Patricia stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. "This is insane. They're lying." Hammer, still filming, said quietly, "No one's lying but you." As the officers cuffed her, Patricia tried to twist free. "You don't know who you're dealing with," she shouted. "Oh, we know," I told her. "You're the kind of person who thought heroes wouldn't fight back." The police led her out past the veterans. Those who could still stand lined the hallway, some saluting weakly, others just staring. Not one of them said a word. Out front, the crowd of bikers parted as the officers brought Patricia through. Cameras clicked, engines roared. The news crews had already arrived. Someone shouted, "Nursing home director starved war heroes," and that line spread like wildfire. By nightfall, her face was everywhere. Every news channel, every social feed, every radio show. The headline said it all. "Greed kills the greatest generation." The next morning, we found out she'd been released on bail. The system let her walk free while those veterans were still struggling to breathe, but she had no idea that her real trial was just beginning. Because the Brotherhood doesn't forget. And justice, when it comes from men who ride with purpose, doesn't always wear a badge. The day after Patricia's arrest, she probably thought she'd beaten the system. A fancy lawyer, a fat checkbook, and suddenly she was out on bail, walking free like nothing had happened. But the thing about freedom is, it feels real short when the world's watching you. When Patricia stepped outside her house that morning, the roar of engines made her freeze. Dozens of motorcycles lined the street, chrome shining under the sun. Every one of us wore our colors, but none of us said a word. We didn't have to. The message was loud enough without speaking. From that day on, she couldn't take a single breath without feeling our eyes on her. We followed her everywhere, legally, peacefully, but close enough to make her skin crawl. Court appearances, grocery runs, fancy dinners with her lawyer. Everywhere she went, there we were, cameras rolling, helmets gleaming. She tried calling it harassment. Her lawyer whined to the judge. "They're on public property," the judge said. "They've got a First Amendment right to protest." Patricia's smug smile started to crack. She tried moving out of town. We followed. She hid at her sister's place 3 counties over. We found her again by nightfall. See, we weren't just angry. We were making sure the world didn't forget what she'd done. And it worked. Every local station ran the story nonstop. People started showing up to Golden Sunset with food, blankets, even handmade quilts for the old vets. Donations poured in. The world was waking up. Then one morning, Hammer called me. His voice was cold. "You better sit down," he said. "There's more." Turned out Patricia had pulled this same stunt before. 2 other nursing homes, different states. Same pattern, falsified reports, starved veterans, money disappearing into her bank accounts. Only this time, the evidence came flooding in from everywhere. Families, nurses, even old employees started talking. The Federal Bureau of Investigation got involved within a week. Once the Fed stepped in, things started moving fast. New charges stacked higher than her fancy hairdo, fraud, interstate theft, homicide under federal statute. Her bail got yanked so quick, her lawyer didn't even have time to file a motion. They dragged her back in cuffs again, but this time she didn't mouth off. The reporters outside shouted questions as she was shoved into the car, and for the first time she looked small, powerless. At her trial months later, the courtroom was packed so tight you could barely breathe. Rows of veterans in wheelchairs filled the aisles. Some could hardly speak, but they showed up anyway, medals pinned to their chests. When Walter rolled up to the stand, the room fell silent. My uncle took a shaky breath and looked the jury dead in the eye. "I survived Normandy," he said. "I survived the Battle of the Bulge. I thought I'd die peacefully at home, in the country I fought for. Instead, this woman tortured us for money." He turned his head and locked eyes with Patricia. "You're worse than the Nazis," he said, his voice breaking. "At least they were honest enemies." The courtroom erupted, some people crying, others clapping before the judge could even call for order. That was the moment everyone understood this wasn't just theft or abuse. It was evil, plain and simple. When the verdict finally came down, the judge's voice was steady. "Patricia Hoffman, you are sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." You could feel the air leave her body. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just stared at the floor like maybe if she kept her head down, the world would forget her name. But we weren't about to let that happen. When the gavel came down and Patricia got life without parole, I thought that would be the end of it. Turns out, karma still had one more round left in the chamber. Word travels fast in prison, especially stories about people who hurt veterans. Within a week, everyone behind those walls knew exactly who Patricia Hoffman was and what she'd done. It didn't take long before justice found her again, the kind you can't appeal. One night, she crossed paths with an inmate whose grandfather had died at Golden Sunset. By morning, Patricia was in the infirmary, bruised from head to toe. She survived, but not without consequences. A feeding tube kept her alive for 6 months because she couldn't chew. Poetic justice, we called it. Some said it was revenge. I just called it balance. While she healed behind bars, we got to work on the outside. Hammer and I met with the board that owned Golden Sunset and told them flat out that until new management was in place, the club would take over daily operations. Supervised, legal, respectful. Nobody argued. Maybe it was the cameras, maybe it was the 200 bikers standing in the parking lot ready to help. We brought in real nurses. We restocked the kitchen. For the first time in years, the smell of home-cooked food filled those halls. You could see life crawl back into the veterans' faces. They ate until they smiled. Some even sang old war songs again. Uncle Walter gained back his weight. We found his missing medals at a pawn shop down on Main Street and his grandfather's watch locked in Patricia's safety deposit box. When I slipped it onto his wrist, he looked at me and said, "Feels like I got my life back, kid." I'll never forget that smile. The club didn't just fix one place, we made it permanent. Every day, a few brothers stop by. They bring lunch, play cards, check on meds, and make sure no one ever gets mistreated again. The walls that used to echo with silence now ring with laughter, radio music, and the occasional rumble of a Harley pulling up outside. We also started checking other nursing homes. We didn't go in swinging, we went in watching. And what we found made our blood run cold. 3 more facilities, same story. Veterans starving, directors stealing. 3 more arrests followed within months. Hundreds of heroes saved because a few bikers refused to look the other way. Walter lived 2 good years after Patricia's arrest. Strong years, proud years. At his funeral, over 300 bikers showed up. We carried his casket ourselves, the engines of our bikes roaring behind the hearse like thunder rolling across the sky. He had earned a Bronze Star at Normandy, but he told me once that his greatest victory was helping bring that woman down. His last words still echo in my head. "We fought evil overseas so you wouldn't have to fight it here, but evil found us anyway. Thank you for finishing our war." When I visit Golden Sunset now, I always stop by the memorial outside. The plaque reads, "They deserved better. We failed them once, never again." Below it, smaller letters say, "Protected forever by the Hells Angels." Because that's what real brotherhood does. It protects those who protected us first. Time has a way of grinding down the proud, and prison has a way of doing it faster. News trickled back to us about Patricia every few months, how she was struggling to stay alive, how the other inmates made sure she never forgot what she'd done. They said she had to eat through a tube most days, and when she didn't, she risked being poisoned. Karma, steady and cruel. Every Memorial Day, she still gets a package. Nobody knows who sends it, though I have my guesses. Inside are photographs of the men she starved, young, strong, smiling in their uniforms before they went off to war. Tucked underneath is a single note that always says the same thing. They survived Hitler. They didn't survive you. They say she cries when she gets those pictures, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of fear. Either way, she'll die in that cell one day, alone, unloved, and forgotten by everyone except the ghosts she made. But the men she tried to erase, they live on in every mile we ride. Golden Sunset isn't the same place anymore. The halls are filled with light, the smell of real meals and laughter that echoes down the corridors. The new management hung photographs of all the veterans who died under Patricia's watch, not to remind anyone of her, but to honor them. Their names shine on the memorial outside, polished every week by writers who never even met them, but still call them brothers. Sometimes I walk through those halls and see new faces, young veterans, broken from modern wars, learning that brotherhood doesn't end when the battlefield fades. We make sure of that. The local community changed too. People donate, visit, help. The kids from nearby schools come by every Veterans Day to shake hands and say thank you. There's pride in that place again, something sacred, something Patricia never understood. As for me, I keep my uncle's watch on my wrist. Every tick reminds me of what he said before he passed. We never stop being soldiers, Tommy. We just find new battles. He was right. Veterans never really quit fighting. They just recruit younger warriors to stand beside them. And sometimes those warriors wear leather instead of camouflage and ride Harleys instead of Humvees. but the heart's the same. So when people ask me why we did it, why we got involved, why we risked everything for a bunch of old men the world had forgotten, I tell them this: because those men once protected us. And protecting them is the only way to prove that brotherhood still means something in this world. We don't wear capes. We don't need medals. We've got engines, loyalty, and the kind of justice that doesn't fade with time. No mercy for the cruel, no silence for the truth, and no forgotten heroes ever again.